Welcome to Less House More Moola podcast. I'm Laura Lynch, a certified financial planner professional and your host. For me, alternative or tiny living is more than just a lifestyle of minimalism or lower cost housing. It allows me to live a life aligned with my values. And as of October 2024, it also allowed us to become 100% debt and mortgage free. If you are looking for alternatives to the conventional path because you want to be more financially resilient and kinder to the earth, you have found the right podcast. So hit that subscribe button because new episodes are out every Thursday. So welcome, Bill Thornton, to Less House More Moola podcast. I am thrilled to be here sitting in your beautiful, very unique home.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome to a tiny town, El Rito, as I've called it for quite a while.
So you and I connected because I was sitting at Cafe Sierra Negra in my, town of Abiquiu, chatting with Mark from Cooks. Shout out to Mark from Cooks. And he's like, you should know Bill up in El Rito. He's been building, he's built a tiny home in El Rito and been building amazing things. And so I reached out an email. So I love to spend time with people in my own community because it seems like our area is just a very supportive community for thinking differently about homes. So thanks for taking the time to share your story.
Yeah. Glad to spend some time with you. I'm not originally from here. I'm a mid-century modern product of Detroit, rolled off the assembly line in 1954. Always loved building things. My dad was very handy, not in the building trades per se, but a commercial lighting designer, had drawings around, and I was fascinated with those. And shelving and a doghouse was my first building product. So I kind of always knew my only thing I had thought about being was an architect.
Yeah.
And that was what I was going to do. And the more I went to school, the more I got tired of going to school. Spent some time in and around Detroit. After my 1 year University of Michigan, I'm going to take a gap year. That was 1973. Still working on that gap year. Spent some time back east, looked at a little property and was going to renovate an old grist mill. The local codes did not allow for septic systems. That was before I knew about composting toilets and the alternative to that. Ended up back in Detroit. Spent a year and a half at a drawing board because the economy was slow. I had been a house painter in my gap year. And I realized I got my drawing skills down, but I realized I do not want to sit at a drawing board forever. I just went stir crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And about that time, I was in a group house around Ann Arbor, as one did. People still do, you split the rent.
Mm-hmm.
My roommate buddy said, you ought to sit in on this class. The title is Low Energy Living. And the professor had met a man in Santa Fe the year before. He had gone around the country looking at energy alternatives and met Peter Van Dresser, who had a house in Santa Fe and a property in some little town called El Rito. And they put together a program. They were going to take students. And I said, I would like to go. I'm not enrolled. They said, you won't get credit? I said, I don't care. I want to see more of the West. And I rolled into El Rito in June of 1975. Wow. So last month, that makes it 50 years from now.
So what did you learn in this class in 1975 in El Rito?
The first day, well, Peter had property in downtown El Rito, and we were up the canyon. We're up almost 2 miles off the pavement here. You go another mile and a half, 2 miles, and there is a property halfway to the waterfall that Peter and his wife owned, and that was where they were going to build this little demonstration community, first day, we're going to make adobes. Who? Yes, I will. I want to do that. So I made adobes my first day in El Rito, and I was fascinated and hooked. So through that summer and the next summer, they had entertained the idea of getting some grant money. It kind of became a process of let's go to the post office, break for the midday, and then became a series of let's sit around the picnic table and read the rejection letters. And they came through, and there was no funding throughout that whole first summer. Through, and I decided to stay through the winter. At that point, I was not going back. So I stayed in El Rito. There was a little cabin, winterized it in exchange for staying there. Sort of became my modus of living rent free. If I learning developing building skills, work on the house in exchange for staying there. So there's your starting on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
Um,
So fascinating. So you were learning these new building techniques for you, new ways of building and thinking about building. And so how did that unfurl for you as you were building this home that we're sitting in?
well, after a couple of years, the owner of the property, it became evident he did not want to sign over that land. We had a group of people. We were very earnest. We drew up some legal documents. Came time to sign, he said no. And I saw the writing on the wall. I said, I'm not going to continue to be a serf for this guy. For
Mhm.
about that time, good friend who is now a neighbor, we met that same year, had bought this whole parcel of land, and it was more than they needed. With he and his wife's family, they bought the parcel and said, would you like to go in on a group that's buying this land? I said, absolutely, positively. So I scrabbled together $5,500, and that became my stake, and I got my piece of dirt.
Wow. And so how many acres did you get for 5,500?
That got me a half share because I needed to stretch my money in a 6.25 acre parcel.
hmm And so do you now own that 6.25 completely?
Yeah, well, we added another acre to it, so I co-own the property.
Interesting. So you have a co-ownership land arrangement.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, the co-ownership concept is something that I've explored in other episodes of the podcast and something that I see as being a real solution at this time when housing, including land, is so expensive.
The prices are, yes. It
Yes.
doesn't matter how little or how much you have, if you don't have enough. I mean, I was lucky that at the time, the little bit I had was enough to get me started.
And do you have like an operating agreement with that other co-owner? Have you?
No, it was very casual. It was the 70s. It was, yeah, we're just going to kind of,
And is it the same co-owner today as it was back
yes.
then? And so your relationship with them is
She doesn't really live here much anymore. We're best neighbor you can have. She's never here.
yeah, interesting. So you were able to secure access to some land, and you started building your home.
Yeah, the first year we decided to put in utilities.
hmm
Um, but in the power, did a hand dug well. So I had power and running water to the site. And that took all of my time and money that first year.
Right.
Second year, so that was 77, 78. Second year, I excavated and laid out the foundation and poured the footing. And that truck full of concrete wiped out my budget for 1978.
Yeah.
And then on the day we poured that concrete, I met Barbara.
Oh,
That's a whole nother story.
yes. That's a whole nother episode.
That's another episode. But we were living across the creek in Jack Edwards' house, where he lives now, but at the time he was farther up the canyon.
Mhm.
And again, in exchange for keeping the house together and improving it, lived there rent free.
Mhm.
And at that point, I was working odd jobs and hiring on as a carpenter.
Hmm. So year one, you got your infrastructure. Year two,
Year
you
one,
poured your
foundations.
footings. And what happened in year three?
Well, then we started building, coming up from the footings, and I realized right away I can't build the whole house. It's kind of a modest footprint. It's about 800 square feet. But I wanted this pantry cold storage room.
Mhm.
And I said, we can build this in a season. So we started to build that.
Mhm.
And that's 200 feet, might be generous. It's probably less than that.
So you had the whole plan in your mind
I
from the
had,
very beginning?
yes, I drew it. I built a model. I don't know where that is today. I would love to find that somewhere. But I built a little clay model, and I had the idea, after working on different projects and just getting the basics of solar tempered adobe structures. Point your house south,
Mhm.
put big windows on the south, small windows, if any, on the north.
Mhm.
Shied away from that western sun. This house is tilted a little bit to the east,
Mhm.
so we get a quicker warm up in the winter when you want it.
Yep.
And we're backed away from that blazing western sun
Yeah.
this time of year.
Yep. That is amazing to me that you began with the end in mind, that you knew what the big vision was and you just started with what was manageable at the beginning.
Well, and now that we're talking tiny houses, I realize that's without knowing that was what it was. That's what I was doing. Because again, it's what you can afford, and that's can allow you to get going. I could not qualify for a mortgage. Did not have a real job. I was a itinerant carpenter.
Right. And so then what prompted you to move forward beyond that, that core part of your home, that first 200 and whatever square foot livable space? What made you move forward with the additions?
Well, I did have the whole house plan,
Mhm.
um, rough drawings, and I had the plan in my mind. And after that first year of living in there, a baby was on the way.
Mhm.
And we wanted, as do-it-yourselfers do, we wanted a home birth. We used the Taos midwife group through the prenatal, very solid, very attentive. They said, your little room is too small to get everybody in if there are complications. We can't really fit everybody in here. This is, we really wanted the baby at home. And we had thought about a teepee. Hence, we put up a teepee. And our first child was born right over there, in a teepee.
Stunning.
And she has since moved around and got some mileage out of living in New York City and telling people, yeah, I was born in a teepee in New Mexico. And they said, no, wait. Visiting, and she said, tell him, Dad, this is the girl who was born on teepee.
So then, after the teepee, were you prompted to expand to accommodate your
We
first daughter?
we did want indoor plumbing. Phase one of the first tiny living had a galley kitchen, had running water and power, but we did not have room to put in a bathroom. We had a sink in the galley kitchen, so it was bird bath and an outhouse. And, in the ultimate plan included a real bathroom. And I thought, well, the rest of the house footprint is kind of big out in front. If I build straight up, I have this foundation of the first room. So we built straight up. So in that era, this was an ungainly looking tall, out of proportion tall facade. But it worked, and we were able to go up a ladder, interior ladder. I had an exterior ladder temporarily, and up and down to do construction. So that was phase two.
Mhm. And what was phase three?
Well, then we began to encapsulate the whole front living room and built these walls, and had the base to go up and build 2 more bedrooms, because we always knew we wanted more than one child, and eventually had 3. So now we have 3 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bathrooms upstairs, a half bath downstairs. So we have kind of the semi-big, although on a pretty small scale, the semi-big American house.
And you said that your square footage footprint is 800.
It's roughly 800, yeah, if you stack it up.
But then if you go up, are you counting just the footprint, or are you counting all of the livable space?
And that's, yeah, I haven't. Did I mention that it's a very odd footprint? One thing we had talked about, would you do something different? I would make square corners. Yes, as you see, it's rounded and sculptural, but boy, it takes longer to build things. All the intersecting crazy angles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like more of a work of art
Well, thank you. Yes.
than a simple home in terms of the way that it flows and the way that it um, presents itself in the world, right? It's more artistic than what a square box is, most homes these days are.
And I guess that's also a function of having grown up in a very small square box
Yeah.
and lived in a number of those, and really liked a taller ceiling and not just a flat plane of drywall above. And so, yes, I had the aesthetics drove a lot of the design.
So as I'm looking around sitting in your home, it does not look like someone built it on a budget. I'm seeing stained glass in the window panes and these beautiful beams and the tongue and groove, or I guess they're not tongue and groove, they're probably just rough sawn boards, but nonetheless, these are thick and heavy things, the arched, windows, and it is a beautiful home. And you were building them.
Years of
J-
building. That's the thing. It's not fast. It's not a fast process.
Right. But you were working just within the community, building for other people.
I worked for other people. I did hire on for a contractor and got more of a real job,
Mhm.
which helped with the cash flow and income. Does not help with your spare time. But this time of year, I'd be on the job and come home and working on the house till it was dark. And that's just what it takes.
Yeah. Hey, you know how in the tiny and alternative living community we're always talking about parking challenges? Well, Eric and I want to help with that. This is why we're opening up 2 parking spaces on our land in northern New Mexico. In addition to the amazing scenery, hiking, rafting, exploring, and the cool artist community, you will have access to the shared resources to fix any problems you might have encountered on your rig. For all the details on parking and problem solving, check out episode 88 of this podcast and then go to altamericandream.com to send us a request for parking. So how did this process of taking time and slowly building your home, how did that impact your family finances?
Well, it allowed us to live again without a mortgage, because I never did. Once I got it rolling, I never thought, well, I want to go out and borrow a big chunk of money. I did not want to get into a behind a big amount of debt. Looking at the numbers, I know that you pay the principal and then you pay more than that in the interest. So I kind of got stubborn and said, I'm just going to earn the money, buy the material, build the house, and keep it simple.
And how did that never having debt impact your lifestyle? Do you ever think about how it was that you were able to make decisions without that weight hanging over you?
I think it gives you a little more freedom. It gives you a little more peace of mind. Um, talking to people who have big mortgages, I think, how would I ever swing thousands plus a month payment? So it allows you to budget because we still have vehicles, insurance, and all the other costs of living and food. And so it allowed us to keep things going where maybe we would not have, certainly would not have had the time to build as large and as comfortable a home.
Mm-hmm. So then one day you woke up and decided to build a tiny home on wheels.
Well, it was not one day. It was a process of over the years, getting older, building materials were not getting lighter. I thought there's got to be a little easier way. I could just build a tiny house because I had built a number of homes and additions over the years. And that involves the whole process of going out somewhere else. I thought, why don't I just build one? Tiny houses on wheels are becoming a thing. So I said, well, I got to build a space because it's going to take me a while. So I built what I call the tiny factory, rolled in a trailer, and started building the tiny house. And it's almost done. And as I got into that process, again, it's my artistic nature, if you will. I've just geeked out on the details, and I'm not just going to knock something together and roll it. And because I thought, well, I could, build a little house on wheels and sell it and build another little house. And so we still have the first one because the more we've done on it, we really like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've shown it to people. And if somebody comes along and makes me an offer I can't refuse, I would probably let it go. But
And so, how was that process for you after having built such a, passive solar, Adobe, beautiful work of art? You
right.
went to those square corners.
Yes.
It's not necessarily as efficient from a, heating and cooling perspective.
Right.
It's a much simpler type home. How did you kind of think about that in terms of how you were used to building?
Well, it was somewhat refreshing that it went together pretty quickly. I could frame it quickly and realizing that I could not put adobes into it and make thermal mass part of the structure, which I know helps the whole nother to go through the design of Adobe and what it does. Listen to the Quentin Wilson episode of Less House More Moola.
Yeah.
But I know Quentin, I come from the Quentin school of heavier house is better house.
Yeah.
So you have to shift gears to thinking the tiny house.
Right.
And I did install a very efficient heat pump, mini split heating and cooling system. And I insulated it. I mean, you would have to open the window or you'll pop your ears, I suspect, if you slam the door.
Yeah. Well, what from
So
what
simple to heat and cool.
yeah, and then, there's a trade-off there for sure,
Yeah.
but you do gain things in, having that simpler structure in terms of ability to move it potentially in case of natural disaster, perhaps lower energy use for, in comparison to more typical residential construction. There's still, pluses. It can't
Yeah.
be, passive solar as an Adobe
Right.
house is, but very interesting. So now it's sitting there. And what is the future for your tiny house? As you said, if someone came around and made you a good offer, maybe you take it. But otherwise, it's sitting there waiting for its future purpose. What do you think
It's
that is?
sitting there. I have when I have the spare time. Now that I'm semi-retired, pretty much retired, got old enough to get a Social Security check.
Mm-hmm.
Helps a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and takes again the time freedom to not be going out and have to make that money.
Mm-hmm.
So there are benefits to aging. And I'm just wait and see on the tiny house. It's people see it, and I've shown it to a lot of people, and it gets rave reviews. And someone may want it. We've talked about putting it somewhere on the property and having it be guest space. That may be very well what it becomes.
Interesting. And did you draw obviously the drawings for it yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And did you draw or did you pull any ideas from other tiny houses that are out there?
I guess I looked at a few online, a few YouTube videos, but again, I had drawn the floor plan. I had the floor plan in mind. Pretty much followed that. I guess we see a pattern emerging here. I tend to visualize what I want to do and do it.
Yeah. So you have had a entire beautiful life here in El Rito, which happened kind of by chance in
Kind
the
of by
sense.
serendipity.
Yeah.
Kind of, yes.
Someone showed up in your life and said, "Hey, there's this opportunity to learn something new." And you followed that opportunity. And then you basically picked up the reins from there and created a life in a place that's completely foreign in terms of where you grew up. And you kind of bootstrapped your entire life in terms of finding work and making money. You bootstrapped your house, you built it yourself over a period of years. You built a family here. You obviously are a huge part of the community. So you've really lived a life that looks quite unconventional in modern terms. Most people feel a certain pressure to, perhaps get an education, maybe, get married and have a couple of
Now,
kids.
I did make the dean's list, and I can go back at any time.
And
University of Michigan would be very happy.
and then they go and get a mortgage, which, as you pointed out, right,
Yeah.
is sort of is a huge debt obligation that we pay off and spend many decades really under the thumb of that. So, what words of wisdom do you have for folks that are kind of on a more conventional path when it comes to housing? What have you learned over your experience that you would like to share?
I think the key would be small is beautiful. I mean, having grown up through the first Earth Day in 1970 and really becoming cognizant of ecology, studying some of that in college, hanging out with the people at the Ann Arbor People's Produce Food Co-op. I was not quite as radical, but it sure rubbed off on me that was, let's all cooperate, cooperatives and cooperate with the planet. So,
And what do you think about that is important at this moment in history?
well, I think it becomes even more important all the time as we see the planet warming up. Fossil fuels are not helping us, trying to shift ourselves away. I'm very proud of our local electric co-op. This little town runs on photovoltaic all day, and there are batteries that are going to be installed in the not too distant future, then we will be 24 hours of. So that saved me. I said, thank you. I will continue to pay my electric bill. I did not have to invest in a photovoltaic array, which I had fully planned on having to do. So that was huge. So here's to the Kit Carson Electric Co-op.
Yeah, I think at this moment in history, as we're all feeling some levels of uncertainty, that looking around our community, finding ways to be cooperative, sharing resources, sharing experiences, sharing expertise, really looking locally is on the minds of many people.
Right.
And that's essentially how you built your entire life.
That does bring to mind back in the 70s, a number of friends and young families as we were, we would have a Vega day, and we would go to Jack's house and we would peel Vegas and get all of us together and put them up. We had an Adobe day here where we had, well, the concrete day, everybody showed up with a wheelbarrow. Everybody that I knew, I said, I can't get the truck all the way to my house. Please bring a wheelbarrow and a shovel and let's pour the footing. And, numerous examples of that up the canyon, over there, that guy. So there was a cooperative spirit that we've maintained, to this day. I mean, Jack and Vicky still live across the creek, and whatever we're doing, if we need another hand, we're back and forth. And other people in town have come and gone and do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing about these rural communities, especially once you get established and you have those relationships, that there is that sharing of muscle that can happen.
Volunteer fire department, realizing early on I should chip in and I could learn emergency medical skills, having little kids, got to be ready. So, yeah.
So for listeners who are out there thinking about how can I create or live in community, you have shared your experience, you co-own land, you you poured the footings of your house with the support of the community. You have supported the community and been a part of other people's building process. And this is something that happens here in El Rito, where people are supportive of each other. And that's something that maybe we can all bring to communities wherever we are, is starting to enhance or birth or bring to light, senses of community that might already exist, but we don't have to stay isolated in our suburban neighborhoods. We can really think about how to cultivate that community wherever we are.
I think that's very well said. I agree wholeheartedly. Let's everybody pitch in,
Yeah. Well,
because we need community support. Especially, I'm not anywhere near as spry as I used to be. So help your elderly neighbor,
and maybe they'll draw some plans for
and
you.
maybe they'll give you that wisdom and draw something for you. And you know, small is beautiful keeps coming back to it. That was, yeah.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for telling us about your life journey and your building journey and how a tiny home came into your life. I'm super grateful that you could share your story to inspire others.
Well, very appreciative of your time, and let's carry on.
Less House More Moola podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Laura Lynch, here in my tiny house. I'm so grateful to you for being along on this journey with me. We are not alone in wanting to live a life that is more gentle on our earth and provides us with financial freedom. So when you have a conversation with someone else considering what alternatives are out there, make sure you share this podcast with them. Let's bring them along with us. Please see the show notes for an important disclosure regarding the Tiny House Advisor LLC in this episode.